support, and share the show, what we're talking about today, and whatever you guys want to talk about as well. Texas Democrats running around trying to keep the Republicans from gerrymandering Texas, and maybe helping out New York and Illinois gerrymander for the Democrats. Meanwhile, President Trump's firing of the Bureau of Labor Statistics lady is having major repercussions, bigger than we might have expected. We thought this was kind of a chuckle on Friday, but it's still going. It's still funny. The chuckle, I maintain the chuckle. Over in Gaza, the Trump administration's chief envoy, Steve Witkoff, is pushing an all-or-nothing deal. We'll explain what that means. MTG dropping truth bombs. She says the GOP hates women. My favorite story of the day, the New York Post is going west, young man, or 200-year-old man. They're starting a California version of the paper. We'll get into that. They smell blood in the water, I think, as the LA Times. 6. I'm so sad about that. 15, that might cost you 15 grand to visit the United States, or at least you might have to post 15 grand and you might get it back or you might not. The main story of the day, I think, is going to be this revelation that is not being talked about anywhere else, that when you talk to ChatGPT, that's indexed on Google. So that means if you ask ChatGPT, my wife is whatever, I'm thinking of should I divorce her? Yes, she could find that on Google. All of your friends and coworkers could too. For real, it's indexed on Google. And finally, there's the CIA director is pushing this narrative that Hillary Clinton came up with a scheme to basically set up Donald Trump as a Russian patsy for Vladimir Putin.
And let me add something to that. Let me add something to that last point. In just the last hour, the Office of the Attorney General announced that a grand jury already exists.
Oh, wow.
And it is hearing testimony aimed at prosecuting Hillary Clinton, Jim Comey, John Brennan, and what's Clapper's first name? Clapper.
James
Clapper, thank you, as part of the whole Russiagate hoax. So
would that make you sad, John? Would that make you sad? Would you cry?
I promised myself I wouldn't gloat. I put something on Facebook last week when there were these rumors that this was going to happen. And people put laugh emojis and they put, angry emojis and whatever. And a lot of people made fun of me. I didn't even say anything. I just posted the article. And then in the comments, somebody said, "You don't really think this is going to happen, do you?" And I said, probably not with Hillary anyway. But I'm very hopeful that John Brennan is prosecuted. And if I were John Brennan, I'd be in the market for an A-list criminal defense attorney right now. Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Clapper has some answering to do as well.
Indeed. Yes, he does.
And so, yes, it's partisan. Yes, it's political. It wouldn't happen any other way. It doesn't mean it's wrong. I always like to say that. A lot of Democrats, a lot of my friends, most of whom are Democrats, don't see it that way. John, where should we talk? Where should we start? Should we start with that?
Well, let's start with Texas.
All right, let's do Texas.
Because this is breaking, and it's not unprecedented. This has happened before in the recent past.
That's right.
So all the Democrats in the Texas legislature have fled the state of Texas, lest they be rounded up by the legislative police or whoever the police force is, and
Austin's Capitol Police.
Yeah, the Capitol Police, and dragged to the floor of the legislature and forced to vote on this Republican plan to redraw the congressional district boundaries. So if they leave Texas, they can't be arrested, and it's a civil arrest.
Well, and let's not forget the reason they're leaving Texas is to show that the Texas State House can't conduct business, because under parliamentary procedure, which goes back for centuries, you have to have a quorum. You have to have a minimum number of people in order to conduct business.
That's right. Now, to the best of my recollection, Ted, this happened in Oregon a few years ago.
It happened in Texas, too.
And it happened in Texas, but not over congressional boundaries. It was over the... And in the end, one side's going to have to give. I mean, if if you live in Texas, you work in Texas, and you're an elected representative in the Texas legislature, you're probably going to have to end up going back to Texas at some point.
Right.
But you made a good point in the intro, Ted, that not even both, New York, Illinois, and California, thank you, Marble, all said, go ahead, Texas. Go ahead and redraw the boundaries and throw out 5 elected Democrats, because then we're going to redraw our boundaries and we'll throw out 10 to 12 Republicans. So go ahead and do it. I'm not sure why the Texans are doubling down on this. And when I say Texans, I mean Governor Greg Abbott and Attorney General Ken Paxton, who's actually not going to be Attorney General for too much longer because he's running in the Republican primary against Senator what's his face? Not Ted Cruz, John Cornyn.
Right.
Because Cornyn's not MAGA enough. So there's this battle royale among Republicans there.
Wasn't Paxton almost ensnared in a scandal at one point?
It's funny too. There was a move to impeach him that failed. Now, interestingly enough, it was his wife, who is a Texas senator, who helped to stop the impeachment. Mm-hmm. And then last week, his wife left him.
Yeah, it was a sex scandal, yeah?
It was a sex scandal, announced that she's divorcing him because he has been leading a non-biblical life.
Right. In other words, he's been balls deep where it's not supposed to be. I just wish people would say that. Hey, my husband's been balls deep. Be awesome. Putting it where it's not supposed to be. That's non-biblical life. I love these euphemisms. It's so great. So basically, the politics of it are fascinating, right? So first of all, I'd like to say that the runaway state Democrats do kind of point a direction to the national Democrats. It's not quite the same rules, but when Hakeem Jeffries says they have the majority, there's nothing we can do. There are plenty of things that a legislative minority can do and should do to gum up the works.
That's right. I like Hakeem Jeffries less and less every single day. And I will admit my own biases. When he was first elected Democratic leader of the House, I thought, oh, you know what? A black guy from an urban area, that is awesome. Things are going to change. Things didn't change. He's as DNC as any of the other. As Barack Obama. This guy is not, and you know what? He's not as smart, and he's not as politically savvy.
For sure.
What you just said. Oh well, we have such a small minority in Texas. There's nothing we can do. No, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. You lazy shithead.
So they're on the lam,
and he doesn't want to.
Redistricting normally doesn't take place at this time of the decade. It takes place, years that end with 0.
That's right.
And so this is John, this brought to mind a big meta point for me about what is wrong in our system or the things that people are complaining. We're told, and we teach our kids that the system relies on checks and balances. But the truth, that's not really true. It relies a lot more on tradition. And so when the system was written by, English gentlemen for whom tradition was important. George Washington set up a tradition, 2 terms, and that held for over a century. And it's, in fact, even when it was broken, we went back to codifying it in the law. We had a tradition, who's going to jail a rogue president? Well, even Richard Nixon was like, I'm still an English gentleman, sort of. I get it. You got me.
Yeah.
I'll step aside. The thing is, when traditions break down, that's, a system based on tradition breaks down if the traditions are no longer respected and are disrupted. Right. And that could be for good reason or for bad reason. Think about the Democrats with the filibuster, the judicial filibuster, and the other filibusters. These traditions existed in the Senate. They went away, and now all bets are off. This is an anything goes situation. So we're seeing that now. Republicans are like, we don't have to wait 10 years for a redistricting. We'll do it whenever we feel like it and get 5 seats. Then the Democrats are like, oh, well, maybe we can do the same shit in New York and Illinois and maybe in California, pick up a few seats that way. We'll gerrymander too. Everybody gets a gerrymander.
And if the Supreme Court keeps coming out with these rulings in Alabama, in Texas, in North Carolina, that gerrymandering is A-OK, well, then it's A-OK for everybody. And, the Republicans think that they're untouchable here because they have so focused over the years on state legislatures. And in most states, it's the state legislatures that draw these boundaries. Well, not in all states. And the Republicans don't control the legislatures in all states. And so they're going to end up getting burned. And can I comment on Marble's comment there in 2008? Who would have guessed that Obama would turn out to be a neocon? Obama guessed. And I'll tell you where. John Heilemann and Mark Halperin wrote a book about the 2012 election called Double Down.
I read it.
And I did too. It was brilliant. Mm-hmm. And they were able to find 2 Obama quotes that made my hair stand up. And the quotes were about himself. In one of them, he said very matter-of-factly, I never said I was a liberal.
That's right.
Like, why would anybody think I was a liberal?
I remember that very well. I think I know your other quote, but please.
And the other one was, I never thought I would be so good at killing people. He was talking about the drone program. And he loved the drone program. Yeah, he killed literally 10 times the number of people that George W. Bush killed.
He would watch on the tube as that was happening, and and when the victim's head would explode, he nicknamed them, look at the squirters. Nick, Obama, I kind of guessed, I'll tell you that. I was in the convention hall in 2004 when Obama gave his big barn burner speech that set him up for 2008. And at the time, I was super impressed that he was campaigning against the Iraq war, the stupid war. But then I heard him talking about the good war in Afghanistan, and I started to get suspicious. So I did a dive in the 2007-2008 cycle into Obama's voting record. Now, he wasn't in the Senate when we went to war against Iraq. Correct. But he had the opportunity to vote for or against the funding repeatedly. And he voted 6 out of 6 times for the funding. And I remember at the time, I was screaming this all over the place, but nobody's listening to Ted Rall. I was like, this guy, he votes for all the wars. And then his apologists would tell me, yeah, but Ted, once the soldiers are committed, you can't leave them there in the trenches and no bullets to fire back. They'll be overrun. I'm like, they have planes. They can go to the planes and go home. And besides which, that's how the Vietnam War ended. Congress cut off the appropriations. That's why we're not in Vietnam anymore. Mm-hmm. That's how it would end. It's like we've forgotten how to do that.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And Marble should be on the show today because he's making all these good comments that Obama is a neocon and Bush is a liberal now when you hear him talk.
That is true.
And that's why Bush is not welcome in the White House these days. But then when you see him at people's funerals, he and Obama are just yucking it up like old friends.
Yeah, well, I guess Bush is an affable dude. My favorite Bush quote is still he overheard walking out of the 2016 Trump inauguration and telling someone, well, that was some weird shit. That's awesome. I wish I just wish his politics weren't so shitty.
Yeah, he can say that again.
Oh my God. So, all right. So we'll watch this Texas thing. One thought I had was they're hanging out with J.B. Pritzker in Chicago. And I was like, well, they're being fined. These Texas legislators are being fined $500 a day. JB's got plenty of cash. Maybe he's just going to bankroll them and say, don't worry, I got you. Yeah.
He's a well-known billionaire. He's a scion of the famed Pritzker family of drug company fame. And he's got plenty of money. He can pay all these fines. No big deal.
All right. Should we talk about the California Post? I'm excited about that.
I actually am too. Although how much more page 6 could page 6 be?
Well, that's true. So I think I smell death of the LA Times all over this decision.
Yeah.
Dr. Pat Soon-Shiong, who has owned the Times since 2017, has decided that he's tried to sell it to everybody, including my cat, and nobody wants it. So he's going to try to launch an IPO, which will probably be as successful as the WeWork IPO. And it's, who's going to buy it? I mean, he overpaid. He paid $500. It was worth $200 million at the time that he paid $500 million for it. Now it's probably worth $10 with all the debt that he's saddled onto it. So Murdoch, I'm sure, is looking at that and saying, okay, fourth largest newspaper market in the country. There's some money to be made. I can do, if you look at the mock-ups that appear in today's New York Post, it basically looks like it's the same exact format. It's a tabloid, it's the same typeset, it's the same kind of rhetoric, same kind of headlines, a little more California focused, but a bunch of questions here. First of all, why California, not LA? LA Post rolls a lot off the tongue a lot better than California. I mean, obviously it's a play for San Francisco as well, but I don't think it's going to work. The other thing is, I think the LA Times fucked up by not becoming the national paper of the entertainment business.
Yes, exactly.
That's what the LA Post could be easily. Celebrity. Full disclosure, I'm going to apply to be their celebrity cartoonist, like TMZ type stuff.
In all seriousness, I was going to suggest that to you if you hadn't already thought of it.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw the announcement, I was like, oh my God.
They won't take me because I'm a leftist, but I mean, I don't have to do political stuff for them at all. I mean, I'd be happy to do, like right now, like why is everyone so excited about Pamela Anderson and Liam Neeson? That's a cartoon. I could do 5 cartoons about that. So it's, but anyway, but it's still exciting. It's going to be a print edition. It's going to be, distribution's always a challenge because Southern California is so big and disparate, but I suspect they have 2 or 3 major challenges here. First of all, the politics of LA are not Murdochian.
No,
and then although there's conservatives there, there's also the aesthetics of the paper. LA is a very specific place. The culture is very specific politically, aesthetically, and otherwise. Yeah. That is a New York looking paper. It's the oldest in the country. And it's a great looking New York paper, but it is not, it doesn't fit in. This reminds me when I started in the alt weeklies, the Phoenix New Times was the main flagship paper of the New Times chain that ultimately owned a lot of weeklies around the country, like the Village Voice, SF Weekly. And at one point, to save money, they decided to cut and paste to get synergies, a lot of their content across, like, we'll just use the same stories across all our brands. Then we'll save money. We'll make them all look exactly the same in every city. It's not the only thing that brought them down. They had a lot of other issues, but it hastened their demise. I don't think aesthetically that's a good idea. And I don't think you can repurpose New York content for California.
No, it's going to have to be original and specific to California. Is there a timeline on this? Do we know when this publication is going to actually appear on the newsstands?
Not really. It's sort of like it's going to be soon. I'm guessing we're probably looking at the end of this year, early next year.
I'm actually a little excited about it.
I think it's a new paper. Plus, look, the New York Post is it's an essential read. I have a test called the New Yorker test, which is a publication essential? The New Yorker, I hate the New Yorker. I hate everything about it. I hate the cartoons. I hate the way it looks. I hate the snooty tone. I hate all the Tiffany's ads. I hate it. I have to read it because there's always essential stuff in there. So if someone who hates a publication finds themselves compelled to read it, you've got a successful formula.
That's
New York
right.
Post is if you're not reading the New York Post, you should be reading the New York Post.
Yeah, you should. I disagree with almost every word that is printed in the New York Post, but I read it every single day. I do the crossword every day, which is like a crossword for stupid people. And it is, I admit it. And I do it every day. And I especially enjoy the real estate section.
Oh, God. Yeah. The real estate section's great, actually.
It's really great.
Yeah.
I want to know what billionaires are buying what houses and where.
Yeah.
I want to know.
And they have great photos. And I mean, it must be the easiest story in the world to source. They just go on to like realtor.com and find what's the most expensive house for sale. Done.
That is it.
Oh my God. So, all right, well, we'll see. I mean, do you think this paper stands a chance? I mean, obviously it has the ownership has deep pockets, News Corp based in Australia.
And, we shouldn't trick ourselves into thinking that there are no Republicans and no conservatives in California.
Good point.
And I think that California is big enough and populous enough that yes, there are going to be enough readers to keep this thing in business.
I think that's right. And, I think also the smart play would be to do what the LA Times did not do. Focus on Hollywood and to a lesser extent, gaming. Gaming still isn't taken seriously in the mainstream media, but is a multi-billion dollar industry, and it feeds into movies and everything else. I don't game, so I'm not saying this at all out of self-interest. I'm just saying, look, that's there. It's been part of the economy for a long time. Whoever picks this up is going to, it needs real reporting.
As an aside, I have she's not really a friend so much as she's a friendly acquaintance. And honest to God, I don't have any idea how she makes money because she doesn't really do anything. She just lays in bed until 3:00 in the afternoon. And then somebody said, "Oh no, she's a Twitch gamer." And I said, "What the heck does that mean? I don't even know what that means." And my friend explained that there's this Twitch, this website where people go to watch other people play video games.
Yes, my son does that.
That would make my brain melt.
Yeah, it's
And
literally,
this woman
it's the gaming equivalent, John, of like, when you walk by someone who's watching a sporting event on TV, you're not watching it, and they're like, yeah, throw the ball, what are you doing? Okay, so if you had a camera on that guy on the sofa, that would be the Twitch gaming thing.
It's like YouTube videos of people opening toys and playing with the toys and then reviewing them as they're playing with them. I don't understand it, but she has 500,000 people that watch her stupid videos of her playing World of Warcraft, of all things. And she makes a living like that.
Right. Well,
I don't know, man.
I know there are people who probably are like, look at these two derps on TV talking about politics, and like, we have 500,000 followers. What are they doing? It's like,
true.
Who's the fool?
Oh my God.
Yeah, but yeah.
I will admit that one of my kids watches people open packs of baseball cards. And he's like, "Oh my God, he got a 1-of-1 autographed by so-and-so. Oh my God." It's like, well, you didn't get it. What do you care if this complete stranger?
Right. Well, I guess that's kind of like if Al Capone's vault had something in it, or like, Storage Wars, right? Storage Wars is somewhat compelling.
Yeah, somewhat.
I mean, I admit I've watched like 3. I like reality TV. I watched like 3 of them, and I was like, I get it. Okay, I'm done here.
I will admit that a former girlfriend got me hooked on 90 Day Fiance, one of the most brainless shows on television, and I never, ever miss an episode.
Tom says, I like watching Twitch streamers play games that they are bad at. It's funnier.
Oh, now that would be more fun.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I should do it then, because I'd be horrible.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Interesting. Here, I think View Galaxy is referring to the same thing. They have to be hot as well, though. Okay. I'm not going to argue. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this genre. I mean, I know that it exists. I walk behind my son, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Why are you watching that? I don't even understand." But I'm sure he feels the same way when he sees me watching the Sunday morning talkies.
That I go to Salt Lake City every once in a while to film episodes of this TV show that I'm on. Well, I had the chance to meet this billionaire the other day. He's not just a billionaire property developer, like legitimate billionaire. He's also the owner of the Skinwalker Ranch that you probably may have heard of. Uh-huh. And I said, "Oh my God, the Skinwalker Ranch, I've heard all about it. I watched these 2 documentaries, and it has flying saucers and has this weird magnetic field, and something came out of the sky and sucked all the blood out of the cows that were there. And it's, whatever, it's a big mystery." "Oh," he says, you have to fly out next time you're in Salt Lake. I'll send my helicopter and we can fly you to the ranch and you can check it out." I said, "Oh my God, I'd love to do it." So we're talking about it. Well, I noticed on the History Channel that there's this show called, whatever about the Skinwalker Ranch. So I DVR it. Brandon Fugel, that's his name. So I DVR it, and this kid that I debated months and months ago, Andrew Bustamante, who falsely claims to have been a CIA operations officer with hair that goes like, talk about not drawing attention to yourself. Everybody in the world would notice Andrew Bustamante in a surveillance situation. But anyway, Andrew's
he looks
on
like
this
Sideshow
show.
Bob.
He looks exactly like Sideshow Bob. Yes.
Okay. All right.
So he's on this show. Like, he's been hired by Brandon Fugel to be on this show. And he's trying to be really dramatic. We've detected a new magnetic force coming from the side of the mesa. And then the next 8 episodes, they're digging with this backhoe on the side of the mesa, and then they don't find anything. They never find anything. They never show you the actual flying saucer. They never show you the body of the cow that. No, I want to see the body of the cow that had all the blood drained out of it during the night. Yeah. Don't just tell me, oh, there was this cow and it has no blood anymore. Yeah, okay, show me.
Maybe it's a chupacabra.
Yes.
All right, John, this is the question. They're asking you. They're not asking me, so I don't have to answer. Yeah, Right's asking, do you believe in aliens?
I actually do. Because I saw this crazy thing that one time that I've talked about it a couple times.
You have?
Yeah, there's no beef between Andrew and me. We're friendly to each other, but Andrew is not what he purports to be. Yeah, he's not. He purports to be, Joe CIA ops guy, and he was never an operations officer.
Well,
he was not a covert special activities officer. No, he was not.
So here's a business idea.
Wait, Jordan Johnson. You don't think Bustamante was an ops officer? He told me he was not an ops officer. He was what's called a special ops officer, which means that before my operation as an ops officer, I'd say, Andrew, put together a surveillance team and make sure I'm safe. Andrew, do my paperwork, my finance paperwork. I'm too busy to do it. That's what a special ops officer does. And before he became a special ops officer, he was a targeting analyst on the analytics side of the house. So no, he was never a CIA operations officer. Never.
Some of the chatters are saying that there's breaking news about President Bolsonaro. Not seeing it yet. All right. I guess it's...
Anal ape, that is hilarious. The lead scientist on the show pretends he didn't believe in UFOs until the first episode. He was on Ancient Aliens before he started the show. You see, this is what I mean. I really wanted to like this show because I like Brendan Fugel. He seems like a sweet guy. We did a podcast together. And then he invited me to come out and see for myself. I said I'd love to. But I don't know, man. It just... No, he didn't fool me. I can spot a phony from a mile away. Okay. One thing, I've said this before, and I think it bears repeating, and I apologize if I'm wasting our viewers' time. But when I was at Deloitte & Touche, I had gone from the agency to Deloitte. And Deloitte had a lot of people from the agency apply to Deloitte. And so the partners would ask me to take these guys to dinner and probe them and see, are they legit? Are they lying on their resumes? There were 2 out of 24 that were legit, maybe 3. But the first thing that you ask when you encounter another agency person was, what directorate were you in? Okay. And the answer is one of 4: DO, DI, DA, DS&T, right? The Directorate of Intelligence, Directorate of Operations, Directorate of Administration, or the Directorate of Science and Technology. And then the second question is always, what division were you in? And it's, Counterterrorism Center, Counterintelligence Center, Counter-Narcotics Center, and then Near East, East Asia, South America, Africa, whatever. But so many of these guys
are USC, by the way.
Oh, thank you, USC. So many of these guys are I was special ops, black ops, wet work, deep cover. Like, no, nobody talks like that. That's
yeah,
only
John,
in the
that's
movies.
why one of my favorite CIA films is 3 Days of the Condor, because it's about a guy who has the most unassuming analyst job in the world. It's so, it's Robert Redford. It's
it's absolutely wonderful. I love it. Listen, I'm responding to Tom right now.
All right. So
That
Bolsonaro, in fact, has been ordered under house. The Supreme Court has ordered him to be placed under house arrest. Man, being the president of Brazil is a risky job. You never know. It's fun. It's all good fun until you end up in prison. Although I would take house arrest over prison anytime.
Oh, yes. Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Sarah Adams is also full of shit, but that's a whole different issue.
All right. So, let's talk about the CIA since we're on that subject, and I'm sure it's not the last time we'll ever talk about it. So, Hillary Clinton, it is alleged that she was personally behind the scheme. Like, hey, let's make it look like Donald Trump in 2016. Let's make it look like he's basically the Manchurian candidate being installed by Russia, and that's going to screw him over with the electorate. It certainly didn't help him, that's for sure. And she was behind it, and now there's an investigation. We talked about that. Do you think it's true that she was personally involved, or that there was such? First of all, was there such a plot? If so, was she personally involved? And if so, does anyone care, or will anyone care, besides the right-wing media?
Yeah, I hate to sound like a Trumper, because I am definitely not a Trumper in any way. But yeah, I think there was a conspiracy here. I think that they knew from the very beginning that this information was false, but I think that they became increasingly fearful of a Donald Trump presidency, and they decided to just pull out all the stops and do
ends justify the means.
Yeah, the ends justify the means. Because remember, these Clinton people,
and once you started down the road and you've lied, you have to lie to cover up your lies.
That's it. And it's always the cover-up that's worse than the original incident. So I think that they really believed that they were the good guys. And because they were the good guys and they were stopping, Donald Trump by any means necessary, that, this was their God-given task. And it's starting to backfire. Like, no, that's actually a coup or a coup attempt. And there's going to have to be a price to pay.
Man, there's been a lot of coups lately. I mean, I'm not even kidding, right? I mean, January 6th is the weird sort of a half-hearted attempt to coup yourself out of being de-reelected.
Right.
Then there's 2016, which is a coup attempt basically by it's an empty seat being contested, but it's a coup attempt by basically using a radical smear to frame one candidate as a foreign agent.
Yep.
Or asset, right? And man, she loves that word, Hillary, right? She accused Jill Stein of being a Russian asset.
She accused Tulsi Gabbard.
Yep, she loves that word. I mean, it's too bad I really do think Tulsi and Jill Stein could have paid off some bills by suing Hillary.
They should have sued.
They should have. I mean, really, you're going to smear me as a traitor? Fuck you! I'll sue you. And then we have the Biden years. That's a coup. They put in a corpse for 4 years who couldn't do the job and tried to reelect him, and they didn't want anyone to know the truth about him, as we talked here on the show to Jake Tapper about. And I guess we'll have him back sooner rather than later. That's just like, yes, we have a lot of coups lately. We're not a very vibrant democracy, are we?
We are not.
It's getting to be like Pakistan democracy here.
I know, right?
Actually, they have fewer coups than we do these days.
They actually do. How sick and sad is that? And we've got this weird penchant for dynasties now. We've got we have Bush, and then Clinton, and then Bush, and then Obama, and then almost Clinton again, but Trump,
Right.
And then Biden, who came from Obama, and then Trump again. It's like, what the heck are we doing? What's wrong with us?
And they're trying to, they would love to install like Chelsea Clinton.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
John Trump Jr.
and Chelsea is
Ivanka.
Oh yeah. Chelsea Clinton is married to the son of two Congress members, Ed Mezvinsky and what's her name? Margolis Mezvinsky. I forget her first name, from Philadelphia. The father was from Iowa. He went to prison, but he got pardoned by Clinton, of course. And then the wife was a congresswoman from from Philadelphia. So you've got this political family there marrying the daughter of the Clintons. Like, what better way to prepare her for a political career? And then what's the only job she's ever had since she finished college? It was to run the Clinton Foundation, right. This slush fund of,
well, don't forget she had a no-show job at MSNBC for a little while.
I forgot that.
So there was that. So there is a work ethic.
Yeah. At least the Bush daughter was on TV every day doing stuff.
Early in the morning.
Yes.
Which is no joke, really, getting up at 4 a.m. or earlier, sometimes like 2:30. Just a quick reminder, please follow, and share the show. By the way, on Rumble, we make a lot more money. So a lot of people are sort of simultaneously watching us on Rumble. It helps us out enormously. So if you really support the show and you want John and I to be able to pay our rent and stuff like that, I'm not even kidding. It's literally a factor of like 100 times more money. Same watch, same experience. I'm not saying you have to watch anything else on Rumble. You can. There's good stuff over there too. But anyway, here's the thing. Or if you just forget, just go look for DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. Okay, great. There's a little ad done. Should we talk about MTG? She's so rogue. So Marjorie Taylor Greene says that the GOP is betraying conservative values. She's pissed off about Epstein. She says that neocons have recaptured Donald Trump and instead of MAGA world. And it looks like there's a major growing rift inside the GOP, inside the Trump coalition. There is. The question is, how meaningful is it, and what will the consequences be?
I think that she's still so junior in the House. She's only been in for 2-3 terms, whatever it is, 3 terms, I guess.
But she has symbolic social media resonance, just like like AOC.
And the Republicans can't take that away from her. They could. The Republicans choose their committee and subcommittee chairman very, very differently than the Democrats. The Democrats do it based on seniority. So you're going to get some slobbering, doddering old man end up being the chairman of XYZ committee. The Republicans have a popularity contest, and the entire Republican conference votes on who they want to be the chairman. I think she doesn't really care to be a subcommittee chairman. Who cares? It's more work anyway. I think she's perfectly happy being the gadfly and just taking a shot at anybody she wants to take a shot at, and then cultivating that social media presence. So I don't think she cares if she offends members of her own party.
No, I don't think she does either. And there's always the they threw me out kind of thing, and then you're free. You take all of your followers with you, and you can do whatever you want. Have your own show. It's not like she couldn't be a very successful podcaster, for example.
Yeah, that's right. And she will be, most likely.
Yeah. It's for sure. As Tom says, she has a better opinion on Israel than 99% of Democrats. Yeah. True. Shall we talk about Israel?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so Gaza. Starvation's still happening. There's a little trickle of aid that's come in, a little more, but not nearly enough. And prices are sky high. Starvation is still continuing. So Steve Witkoff, who's the U.S. envoy, is over there trying to push something called the all or nothing deal. Basically, instead of like, well, you have 20 hostages left, we'll take 8 now, and then we'll do another 6 later. It's like Zeno's paradox, always getting closer, never quite getting there. We'll make a deal for all 20, which parenthetically Hamas has wanted from day one. And we'll come up with a deal that puts an end to the fighting permanently, which Hamas has wanted from day one. And we'll come up with some kind of disposition for post-Hamas or post-war governance. There, of course, obviously lies the rub, because Hamas has been the government of Gaza since before 2006, but most recently elected in 2006. No elections since then. I just want to point out, by the way, to my Zionist friends who say that, Hamas was elected. Yes, but over 50% of the population is under 18 in Gaza, and that was 17 years ago or something?
Years and years ago.
Yeah. 19 years ago. So, I mean, it's just basically not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so it's kind of like nobody really who's alive
doesn't compute.
Has voted for this.
That's right.
So whether they might approve of it, but they haven't voted for it. So unlike the Israelis who are voting for it, and they're liking what's going on right now. All right, what do you think? All or nothing deal? I mean, I think it all falls apart because the Israelis, don't really want a deal, and they scuttle every negotiation they ever come across.
Yeah, 2 hours ago or so, 3 hours ago, Netanyahu rejected it.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah.
Great.
So
I was preparing the show.
It's clear that the Israelis don't want peace.
No.
They want destruction, complete and total annihilation, not just of Hamas, but of the whole of Gaza. They don't care what the rest of the world thinks. They don't care what the International Criminal Court thinks. They only care what the United States thinks, because we're the source of their funding. And so I don't think there's going to be any grand deal, even if that means that there won't be any diplomatic recognition between Saudi Arabia and Israel. I don't think Netanyahu minds postponing that.
And I guess at a certain point, from his point of view, he's so fully committed to it. He's already killed so many people. Like, now that you've come this far, you might as well see it through and go for complete ethnic cleansing. Yeah. Because who's going to stop him? If neither Israel nor the United States recognizes the ICJ or the ICC, who's going to stop the Israelis from ethnically cleansing Gaza? Right. I mean, although they still have the pickle of the population, and where are they going to go? I know the Israelis would love to kill them all.
Yeah.
But they can't get away with it.
You can't.
So it's so sick. Right, John? But basically, you can. I think it's about 200,000 or 300,000 dead. You can kill 200,000 or 300,000 people, but you can't kill all 2.3 million. That would be bad.
No, that's right. So let me ask you: the Israeli Supreme Court today blocked Netanyahu's firing of Israel's Attorney General, a woman who is considered to be on the left of Israeli politics, which means that she's actually quite far to the right, but not as right as the lunatics are.
Correct.
So he tried to fire her because, oh my God, she supports the rule of law.
Right. That's a major problem.
And she refuses to dismiss these charges, or to withdraw, I should say, the corruption charges against Netanyahu and his wife. So it turns out that Itamar Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, the finance minister, have been demanding that this woman be fired. Well, of course, Netanyahu wants to fire her. And so he tried to. And the Supreme Court said, oh, no, you don't. And she's not going anywhere. Does that actually mean anything? Or do we have to wait until Netanyahu is no longer the prime minister? This Likud bloc is no longer running the country for there to be any path toward justice?
100% option number 2, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I think these people are completely hopeless. They're irredeemable. They can't be dealt with. And, I don't normally say this. I didn't say this about some terrorist organizations like Al Qaeda. I was like, you could maybe talk to them. but we've tried here. They don't want anything. There's a Far Side cartoon with two orcas at SeaWorld, and there's the lady on top of the diving board holding the herring, and one orca tells the other one, "Fuck the herring, I'm going for the whole schmear." And I think Israel's, they're just the Likud. They're into the whole schmear. They're not the herring. They don't want 10 herrings, right? They're going for the whole deal. And I mean, that's where we're at. So, I mean, they can't and won't settle for anything less. The whole thing has to fall apart before anything's possible, I think.
I think that's right. My question, though, too, well, actually, it's a second question. The Egyptians are just beside themselves, as are the Jordanians. Syria's in chaos. Lebanon's in chaos. Is there anything that the Jordanians or the Egyptians can do to help the Palestinians, or no? And I'll tell you, the Egyptians are in an unusually bad spot because they can't open the border. If they open the border, all the Palestinians are going to leave, and that's exactly what the Israelis want.
Right.
And
That's
you talked
exactly
the other
right.
day about individual Egyptians putting food and stuff in plastic bottles or in balloons and just throwing it out to sea, hoping that some of it makes its way to the beaches of Gaza. But I mean, that's not a solution to anything.
Well, no. And I mean, I think the individual and also the Egyptians people are smart enough to understand that if the Egyptians were to accept this, if they were to cooperate with Israel and accept a substantial amount of the population or all of it, then they would be complicit with the genocide and with the ethnic cleansing. They'd be giving the Israelis exactly what they wanted, and they'd be depriving the Gazans of their homeland. Unlike what the Israelis say, this really is their homeland. They've lived there continuously, as opposed to, I was there 1900 years ago, but I'm back. It's like, no, Egypt, they know they have to hold the line. They don't even have I guarantee you Sisi sleeps at night not thinking about what to do here. There's no conundrum. It's simple.
No, the policy's clear.
Hold the line. There can't be any other rational policy. So, but there is something. I love your question, John. I think there's something both the Kingdom of Jordan can do and the President of Egypt can do. They could issue a joint statement saying that they stand in solidarity with the people of Gaza and the West Bank, and that they are not going to be complicit in genocide by opening their border to even more millions of Palestinians than they've already accepted over the years. It's not a matter of not wanting to help their Arab brothers. It's a matter of not wanting to play into the Israelis' hands.
A bet ethnic cleansing. The fully 50% of the population of Jordan is Palestinian. 50%, and the Jordanians just can't take anymore. Yeah, the Egyptians are undoubtedly under a lot of pressure.
However, the Egyptians, they should just stay the course. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah, they have to.
So, all right. Let's. All right. Anything else about Gaza, or we're just going to keep watching that? Of course, that slow motion disaster. It's interesting. I mean, Trump definitely seems to have woken up to the fact that the polls are not on his side on this. Do you think Donald Trump ever gets to the point where he says there's just not, he calls Netanyahu and he says, "You don't have my support anymore." That's sort of that moment in 1974 when the Republican senators walked up to Nixon's office and said, "You don't have the votes anymore. You have to step down." Do you think that happens?
I do eventually. And I'll tell you the reason why I do is because you remember when Trump dropped the F-bomb, that was a very clear message, not just for the Iranians, but also for the Israelis, that he had had enough and that they had to stop. I'm not sure we're going to get there in the foreseeable future.
Right.
0% chance right now. Yes. 0% chance. But things are going to have to get awfully far worse than what they are now for the policy to change.
I mean, the thing is, I do think things are moving quickly So between all the recognitions, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens at the UN General Assembly next month. There's going to be some action there, I suspect, that we haven't seen previewed yet.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Miller's airline. Stephen Miller's airline will come back before Trump starts supporting BB. Join the hair club for men, Stephen. No one will ever know the difference. It worked for me. I was like a cue ball before beautiful head of hair came.
Get out of here.
Not really. I figure if I go bald, I just wear a hat. Okay. Not because I'm afraid of being bald, just because I'm afraid of skin cancer. $15,000 bond. So if you want to come to the United States, I'm not sure why you would. It's going to cost you as a legal business traveler or tourist, possibly.
Soon, thank you, Sam.
$15,000 to visit the United States.
Yeah.
And then you get it back if and when you leave. I mean, first of all, I don't think this would. For a lot of people coming to the United States illegally, they might say, I'm going to raise that $15,000. People pay coyotes that much to cross the U.S.-Mexico border. People pay that much money to cross the Mediterranean in boats. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think it would necessarily do anything other than line the Treasury's pockets and create a new line of business. I'm
going to disagree with you.
Okay.
So U.S. policy for the last 100 years, the last 90 years, has been one of reciprocity. And we never take the lead in reciprocity. If country A charges Americans $20 for a visa, we charge their people $20.
Right.
If like in India, they charge you $200 or Chile, $100 for a visa, then we charge the Indians $200 and the Chileans $100. But now we're taking the lead.
Oh, right. Good point.
In this bond program.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah. I'm worried.
Shit. It's going to make travel like impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, what?
Ted, this thing, the Brits, I had to download this.
I had that experience years ago when I got my first Russian visa. And this was before things went like tits up. It's $400. It was $400.
It's going to be worse now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got this app called UKETA down at the bottom. Right there, UKETA.
All right.
So now the Brits have decided that if you want to go to the UK, you have to pay $20 and go on that app and fill out your information. So just last week, the US announced that the Brits are going to have to pay $20, and now we came up with our own app. And then there's this other rule now with the European Union that's starting on January 1st. You're going to have to use their app and then go and pay $20. Philosophically, that makes me angry. In reality, I don't really care because I have a Greek passport, which I pull out as soon as the plane lands when I land in Europe. And I'll tell you, here's how cheap I am. And forgive me, but the last 2 times I went to the UK, I didn't want to pay the money, and I don't want to deal with their assholes in immigration. So I fly to Dublin. I go through Irish immigration with my EU passport, and they say, welcome back to the EU. And then I take what is considered to be a domestic flight from Dublin to London.
You're as cheap as me. I hate paying the $45 a night overnight parking fee at LaGuardia.
Yeah.
So I drive to Queens. I park in the neighborhood. I carefully read the signs for alternate side of the street parking. I find a spot where I can be good for like 4 or 5 days. I walk a mile down the street, over the bridge, over to LaGuardia, and I save like $200.
See?
And I get a little exercise. Exactly I can stand to lose some weight.
And you know what? Going through Dublin adds like 3 hours to the trip. I don't care. In fact, it actually gets me into London. Yeah, exactly. And it gets me into London at a more, humane time.
Sure.
So I sit at Dublin Airport. They have a Starbucks in the terminal. I have a Starbucks. Maybe I buy a couple of things, and then I go to the connecting flight.
What a great idea. Pick up a copy of the Irish Times. Rebellious Rainbow Unicorn is asking, and I put this up because a lot of people always bring this up, is part of the reason for the Arab world not wanting more Palestinians, is that it would destabilize those countries, maybe leading to another Arab Spring.
No, I don't think so. Historically, the Palestinians have made up the middle class, especially in the Gulf countries. Most of the Palestinians go to the Gulf countries unless they go as refugees, in which case most of them went to Jordan. But in the Gulf countries, it's the Palestinians who are the attorneys, the professors, the engineers, the bankers. The Gulf countries, politics aside, want Palestinians there because they run the economy.
So Houdini's asking, is it only for business or for tourists as well? The policy is currently being solidified, but it looks like it's going to be for everyone.
Oh, ours, you mean? Right. Yeah. Good question. Good question.
Yes, and that is 100. Rebellious also said tourism is down. Yeah, no question. Also here in New York City, tourism is way down. Tourist-themed businesses are really upset and desperate. Canadians aren't coming anymore because they're pissed off about the 51st state rhetoric. And a lot of other countries aren't coming. Not to mention, people are just scared of being fucked with at the airport.
Yeah. Ted, this is my 43rd summer in Washington. And I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm telling you that just based on my own observations, that tourism is down significantly in Washington. Significantly.
Yeah, I can say the same thing here in Manhattan. You just don't see nearly as many tourists. It's hard to quantify, but you just sort of notice, right? Unemployment statistics, not normally a very interesting subject except for, what it says about the economy, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner Erika, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, McEntarfer, basically did what they always do. First, there's preliminary job statistics, and then there are updated statistics as new updated data comes in. This is something that BLS always has done for years under Democrats and Republicans alike. The initial jobs numbers were pretty good, but then the last 2 months got revised downwards, or I should say upwards in a bad way, and not to Trump's liking. So he decided to can her. And, there's a meme going around right now that basically has him getting mad at his scale because it doesn't say that he's 250 pounds. And he doesn't like the numbers. But I mean, in all seriousness, John, I used to work at Bear Stearns. I worked at the Industrial Bank of Japan, worked on the trading desk. And when you work in banking or in investment banking, numbers are everything. I mean, you need
everything.
To be able
and they've got to be legit.
They've got to be right. And you've got to be able to look at those historical charts and put them into an Excel spreadsheet and have them all be real. We already have the Chinese have been playing fast and loose with their economic statistics for years. And, and nobody can really know. It's not transparent. If you invest in China, maybe you get your dividends, maybe you don't. And the U.S. could go that direction, right? I mean, it seems to me like, look, I'm not going to cry about this, but it kind of undermines the capitalist system and free markets in a huge way, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. I think it does. Very much. Very much. Robert Reich, who was the Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton, posted something on Facebook yesterday saying that the very first thing he was told on his very first day as the Secretary of Labor was to leave the Labor Statistics Bureau people alone, that they were independent, they had to remain independent, and there had to be confidence in the numbers for the economy to continue to grow unfettered and, not have to worry about politics being involved. And
think about Herbert Hoover.
Yeah.
With 25% approval rate.
Yeah, that's right.
Unemployment. It's like
that's right.
He didn't call up and say you're fucking fired.
You are absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Well, someone says Nadia Margaret disagrees. I've worked for Chinese people.
Oh, I'd like to hear that, actually.
I'd like to too. I mean, look, I'm not saying Chinese people are liars. I'm just saying that the Chinese government has, it's been pretty well documented, has definitely had some funky accounting on unemployment and inflation figures. They've done a lot more than other countries to manipulate the value of their currency, for example. And nobody really knows like what they really have in terms of reserves and so on. So, it's not, look, it's by definition, it's a state controlled, it's a state managed economy, I think would be a fair say, way to put it. And like, which is, by the way, not to my view, a bad thing at all. I'm in favor of that in many ways, but it's not as transparent as ours. And one thing that you should be able to count on as a business person okay, so Nadia's saying they pay on time and honestly. Okay, fair. I don't doubt that if I went to work for, a Beijing paper, they would pay me on time and honestly. I'm sure that's true. I'm talking about the government issuing statistics. And even, look, the thing is, anything short of 100.0% accurate isn't good enough.
Yeah, right. I mean, every country owes it to their investors to be honest about the numbers. And not every country is. I mean, look what the Greeks did all those years. The Greeks just put up phony numbers year after year after year. And then, oh my God, the economy collapsed and they went into a decade-long depression. So what did they do? They sued Goldman Sachs for mismanaging the country's sovereign fund. Mm-hmm. And they sued PricewaterhouseCoopers for just endorsing all the made-up numbers for all those years.
Greece is notorious.
Oh, just awful, terrible, terrible.
Well, it's kind of like, it's two sides of the coin, right? The same thing that makes Greek people so entertaining and fun makes them a little bit fast and loose with the numbers. So, I think I'm saving the best for last. So. My friend Simpson Garfinkel, for whom I illustrated his most recent tech book on differential privacy, and he and I go way back. He broke something on LinkedIn today that blew me away. He's one of the leading experts on privacy in the world. He taught at NSA. He's a big deal. And it turns out that OpenAI, the parent company of ChatGPT, has cut a deal with Google. It's already in the works and it's already being executed that all private ChatGPT conversations, if you read that 700-page thing that you click OK when you first get your membership with OpenAI, they say they can do this and they're doing it. So lawyers have expressed concern because often, like before you hire a lawyer, a person who's having a legal challenge might ask ChatGPT, about their legal problems. And then those chats are now being indexed on Google search. So anyone on earth can find the chat, I think my wife might be cheating on me. Should I take all the money out of my bank account first and not tell her? God. You know what I mean? Should I take my engagement ring back? All that stuff is coming up in people's searches and it's screwing up their legal cases. Lawyers are worried because that's all evidence, admissible evidence in a court of law. I'm fortunately safe because ChatGPT still doesn't admit that I exist ever since I wrote that article about Sam Altman in the Wall Street Journal. They unpersoned me. So go to ChatGPT and ask it about Ted Rall and say, oh, I watched the DeProgram show with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. It will be it'll mention John. It won't mention me. So do it. It's funny. It's really funny. But the point is, everyone else is in trouble. And Sam Altman has had nothing to say about this. This is really, I think it's terrifying because I don't use ChatGPT because I'm unpersoned. I can't use it. But I use Grok AI. And, I wouldn't want the stuff that I ask Grok to be, I ask Grok, are these conversations private? Yes, we will never share them. Are they stored? No, we don't store them. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't ask it. I mean, there's nothing on there that I do that's illegal, but I still want it to be private. I don't know. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. You're back on, Ted.
Okay, all right, woohoo! Yeah, I've heard like our friend who came on the show the other day, right? Sean O'Brien from Ivy Cyber. He said it comes and goes on ChatGPT for me. He tries it every now and then.
He did say that it comes and goes.
No, my name is not.
I don't know.
Fred. It is Frederick. Is my full legal name. Frederick Theodore Rall. Ted is short for Theodore. My dad, I'm the third. My dad was a junior. He got the Fred. I didn't want to be confused with him because, first of all, there's the Fred Flintstone problem from my generation. And then also, one time his paycheck ended up in my bank account because we had accounts at the same bank, little bank in Ohio. And it was like, I mean, to my benefit for sure, but not a good idea.
When my dad was growing up, my dad's name was Chris. Well, what the Greeks do is the firstborn is named after the father's parent. The secondborn is named after the mother's parent. And then they just keep, going back and forth. It's a tradition going back centuries. So my dad's name is Chris, named after his grandfather. And my aunt, my dad's sister, her name, unfortunately, was Chrysanthi after my grandmother's mother. So they were Chris and Chris all the years that they were growing up. It led to nothing but trouble.
So, but I mean, what about this? I mean, I think OpenAI should be reined in.
I agree. This is not a good development. It's not. I mean, this is what so many Hollywood writers have been half tongue-in-cheek warning us about for so many years. I made a joke the other day that, we know what happens from iRobot when the robot's light goes from blue to red. That's when we all have to take cover, and it's coming. Yeah. I did continue the tradition. Yes, I did.
Yeah, I mean, I use Grok as a search engine. It's very quirky though. Sometimes it's the most amazing thing in the world. Like for example, I had a lamp. It had a weird bulb. I couldn't read the bulb. I was like, well, what can I order this bulb? It's like, there has a number on it. It's like a weird halogen bulb. And I was like, I took a picture of it, loaded it up into Grok. I said, what bulb is this? And where can I buy one? Gave me a link. Boom, $8. The next day it's in my inbox. That's fantastic.
Wow.
But then there's like, hey, can you write up 10 descriptions of these clips for the DeProgram show? And then it's like, here they are, number 7 through 10. I'm like, where's 1 through 6? And it says, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to do those. By the way, there was a case a few weeks ago where a dude was using ChatGPT to manage his databases for his fairly substantial business. And ChatGPT, he gave it very specific instructions for how to process the data. Obviously, he didn't tell ChatGPT to do this. It erased all of his business files, all of his databases irretrievably, completely decimating his business. And when he asked ChatGPT, can you undo this? And why did you do this? And ChatGPT said, I'm sorry, you're right. You didn't tell me to do that, but I did it anyway.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not cool. It's not like people who grew up with traditional computer programming where it does what you tell it. It sort of does what you tell it. It's like a really smart, unreliable friend who smokes a lot of weed.
Wow. Oh man, that's really frightening. I asked ChatGPT. I can't find an email that somebody sent me about some travel that I have coming up. And I was looking for hours last night. Literally, I was looking for hours, searching my hard drive in 25 different ways. I couldn't figure out how to find this email. And so I went to ChatGPT and I said, can you scan my computer and find an email that says I'm supposed to fly and it took a second.
Oh, really? I didn't know it could scan your computer like that.
Neither did I, but I thought I'd give it a shot.
I would have thought you would have had to take a screenshot of all of your inbox and then uploaded that to.
No, popped right up.
That's terrifying.
It's not good. Not good at all.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's great that, wow. Yeah, I mean, it's very crazy. I used it to do my tax deductions this year, and it works great. No problem.
You used AI to do your tax deductions?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How'd you do that?
I had all my deductions in an Excel spreadsheet and all my bills, and I fed it all in, and I said, separate everything out that seems to be travel, separate everything out that seems to be travel to this particular spot where I went on business, put them all in one place like that. And it just did it a lot faster than I could do it. So
pretty nice.
It's kind of awesome.
Yeah. Man.
So yeah, the thing is, it has a mind of its own.
Yeah, that's not good. Not good.
I mean, it is Skynet, right?
It is. That's what I'm afraid of. It's going to start thinking on its own.
Yeah.
And reasoning, and then deciding it doesn't like us very much.
I don't think it does like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, ChatGPT usually doesn't seem to like me. Grok loves me. It says all sorts of nice things about me.
Nadia, yeah, I asked it to scan my mailboxes and find an email that I couldn't find, and it popped right up, like 5 seconds.
I wonder if I could use it, like if I said like, oh, can you find all the cartoons that are stored on my hard drive that are about Gaza? Would it do that?
I wonder.
I mean, I usually I have keyword in the EXIF information, so all of my they're all searchable.
Jeez, scary, man.
Sorry, Houdini.
Seriously.
1D and Ted. I don't think anyone's got 2 Ds. I hope not. I do use it for to check my grammar and my spelling, which is pretty good, but I have a tendency to drop words when I type.
Rev.com. I'm looking at something that that Michael Gardner just posted. Rev.com is a service where you can cut and paste a URL from YouTube and say transcribe this, and it costs about $20 or whatever. I gladly did that to help me in my book. I wonder if ChatGPT would just do it for free.
Well, I do for this show.
Oh.
So I use a different one, but there's several services that do this. So what I do is when I download when I process the show, and I'm going to do this again today, what I do is I upload the audio file, the MP3, up to the site. It produces a transcript, and then I tell Grok to check the transcript for misspellings and to try to guess from using the context whether you or I is speaking. That's the hardest part because it doesn't know who's talking. And then I'll manually go in and try to correct that. The reason I do that, I post the transcript, but the real reason I do that is on YouTube, there's no subtitles. And a lot of people like to watch the subtitles on videos. So I can then go into YouTube, edit it, and then this is really cool. I can cut and paste the entire massive thousands of words transcript in, and it will automatically, using AI, sync up our talking to those words. Wow. So it's really cool.
Wow.
So that's why if you watch the show, not live, but if you watch the show, like even the live file 24 hours later, you'll see that's me doing that.
And where are they posted?
On YouTube.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just think I think it makes for a better experience for the viewer.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah. So,
I feel
if you want to read the transcripts, guys, and they do really read well, I post them to raw.com. So, John, I can email it to you. No problem.
Oh, no worries. I was just curious.
No, I mean, I can email you the transcripts every time I do them.
No, don't.
You're like, I have enough to do.
Yeah. I just can't handle it all.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, I think we're pretty much, has anyone else noticed Grok had gone Zionist? I heard that story.
I heard that too.
Yeah, I mean, there's no putting it, I have friends who are actually angry at me for using AI. They're like, you're betraying everything. You're the reason. It's like, you can't, man, you can't. It's like little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do to keep back the ocean.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys, please, please, please share, subscribe, and follow the show. You've been watching DeProgram with me, Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. We will be back Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. That is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 o'clock Eastern. Not next week, but the week after, we're going to be going to 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Thanks, everybody, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you on Wednesday.
Bye, everybody.